Welcome back, everybody, to another Sabaton reaction video, and I'm going to be watching the animated story video version of Night Witches because I've been getting a lot of feedback from you guys that you want me to react to Night Witches, so I'm going to do that today. I know a little tiny bit about this story, just enough to know why it's called Night Witches, and that's about it. I know that there was a unit of female bombers in the Soviet Air Force, and they were called the Night Witches by the Germans because of the nature of their attacks, and they likened it to the sound of broomsticks, something like that, but I know very little else about that. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch this, and I'll do a little bit of reacting to it as we go along. And then at the end, I'm actually going to read over some of the information that I've pulled up, but I have not yet read about these Soviet bomber pilots, these female pilots that may be in addition to what we learned during this video. And one other thing I want to let you know is that I've gone ahead and created a Patreon page for this account. I have one for my gaming channel, History Guy Gaming, but I wanted to create a separate one for this. And so if you're someone who would like to support this channel, since I'm not making any money off of these videos, Sabaton rightly makes the money off of anything that might come from ad revenue on these videos that I do because it's their copyrighted content. But if you want to support this channel so that I'm able to continue to devote my time to doing this, click on a link in the description. It'll take you over to my Patreon page for Vlogging Through History, and you can see some of the ways that you could possibly support the channel. Thank you in advance for that, because this YouTube is my means for making money right now. I travel around the country speaking in schools about kindness and compassion for an organization called Rachel's Challenge, but that's all shut down right now because of COVID, so unfortunately I just don't have an income, so I've been trying to devote as much time as I can to this. But anyway, enough about that. Let's dive into Sabaton Night Witches.
The Germans are resting behind the lines of the Eastern Front, their tents in neat rows. All is in order in the quiet and still of the night. It's cold, and the winter snow crunches under the jackboot of a guard. Looking up into the sky, the snow starts to drift down. It's peaceful here.
I love how they're telling this story.
No, it's just the wind.
Very descriptive.
Suddenly, piercing the still of the night, there's an otherworldly scream and a whoosh as a dark form speeds by. And was that a woman's laughter in the distance? There are no engine sounds, and the suddenly fearful German soldier loses his footing.
No engine sounds, they're gliding.
Die Nachthexen. The world is all at once a bloom of fire and ash, and two more dark forms pass without a sound. Hearing the whooping and celebration of these supernatural creatures, the guard shakes himself from his fear and calls out, Die Nachthexen!
The Night Witches, the Night Witches.
The Night Witches! In the sky above, 3 planes of the soon-to-be famous 588th Night Bomber Regiment, their engines now running, turn east for home. Time to rearm and refuel for another mission. Coming into land, they're greeted by their commissar.
So they would glide bomb with their engines off.
The young girls that form the pilots and navigators are between the ages of 17 and 26.
Young women, that's amazing.
They are desperate to take the fight to the Germans.
Good for them.
Traveled from all over Russia to join the all-women regiments.
And shame on all the other countries for not taking advantage of women who could do this.
Women are placed, but that didn't stop them from carving their name in history. In the early days, they were largely ridiculed by the Soviet men.
Not anymore.
Given men's uniforms that were too big and shoes all of the same size, the women did the best they could with the clothes, making them fit with belts or filling the large men's shoes with stuffing. The equipment they were given was woefully out of date. The Polikarpov PO2 was a 2-man trainer, underpowered and made of cloth and wood. These old string bags were nicknamed crop dusters, or even worse, sewing machines due to the noise their tiny engines made. But the women of the 588 ignored the taunts.
Good for them.
And despite the odds, turned the plane's shortcomings to their advantage. The planes at maximum speeds were far below the stall speeds of any of the German fighters. Giving them a tight turning circle, they were almost impossible to hit. They were susceptible to small arms fire and anti-aircraft guns, so their strategy was to attack in threes, with a navigator in each plane. At her signal, the pilot would cut the engines and swoop in slowly, silently, dropping their bombs, dealing death from above. Unexpected, undetected, stealth perfected.
Love it.
If necessary, the other two would draw fire from the fighters or from the ground. They slept during the day and rose at dusk to take their vengeance on the invaders.
So I got to say, first of all, and I started to allude to this, but I didn't want to talk over him too much. The Soviet Union rightfully gets a bad rap for the way it treated its own people, hurling millions of men to the front without much training and really kind of devaluing their lives. And Stalin, was responsible for the deaths of millions of his own people, not in combat, but just in gulags and just the way they were treated, sending them to Siberia and even kind of eradicating his own commanders. But of all the countries around the world, who are the ones who allow women combat roles? It's the Soviet Union. So I think this is amazing, and I say good for these women. And I know that there were women fighting on the ground too, like at Stalingrad. There were women snipers and things like that. So I think this is a story probably very much undertold, and I wish more people knew about it. I wish I knew more about it.
This unnatural bravery and their stealth tactics earned them their title, the Night Witches. The German ace Johannes Steinhoff said, "We simply couldn't grasp that the Soviet airmen that caused us the greatest trouble were in fact women." These women feared
Good
nothing.
for them. That's awesome. Here comes the song. Yarn Hub. Again, great job, Yarn Hub, with this animation. It's fantastic. I wonder how many of these women were killed in combat. Yeah, that would have been the big problem, though, is ground fire. They were just too slow and easy to hit. Yeah, I would imagine they probably had high casualties. Good for her. And she's like, screw you, man. So I wonder how much of the story they'll tell here at the end, because we're going to take a look at a little more of their story
32
when this is over.
Both pilots and navigators
32.
never came home. The 588th became highly decorated and respected, flying more than 23,000
Wow.
sorties, dropping
That's
over
amazing.
3,000 tons of bombs.
Good for them.
23 Night Witches were awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union, although they were disbanded just 6 months after the war, and not allowed to fly in the victory parade, given their planes were so slow. From 1956, after she retired from active service, their commissar, Yevdokia Rashkevich, took it upon herself to find the site of every single one of her girls that was downed,
Good for
to
her.
mark the place and to pay her respects to each one of the incredibly brave
Awesome.
Night
Awesome.
Witches.
That is very, very cool. So let's take a look a little more of their story from what I was able to find. Now, granted, Wikipedia is not the best source, but they do tend to source all of their information. So here's what I was able to find just kind of looking up some of this. On October 8th, 1941, an order was issued to deploy 3 Women's Air Force units, including the 588th Regiment. The regiment, formed by Marina Raskova and led by the major that they just talked about, was primarily female volunteers in their late teens and early 20s. So they dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs and 26,000 incendiary shells. It was the most highly decorated female unit in the Soviet Air Force, with many pilots having flown over 800 missions by the end of the war. And 23 were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. 32 of its members died during the war. That's amazing. I mean, these were 1928 planes being flown in the 40s. They were so outmanned and outgunned. But like it said, it was its max speed was lower than the stalling speed for the Bf-109s, which made it very difficult for the German pilots to shoot them down. Except for Ace Joseph Kochiok, who grounded the regiment for an entire night by shooting down 3 or 4 of their planes in one night. So there's a timeline of their operations. Battle of the Caucasus. They fought all the way up through to the last offensive of the war in May of 1945. That's incredible. 261 people served in the regiment, of whom 32 died. They were all commanded. It wasn't even like, it was women flying the sorties, but men commanding them. They had women commanders as well, which makes this even more incredible. They have a female commissar as well. They had one that was suppressed and sentenced to death in 1942, but later acquitted. It doesn't say why, though. A couple of them were sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for dismantling a flare and using small silk parachutes to sew undergarments. That's interesting that that's what they would be sentenced for. And there were other women ones as well. And it says here that there was a UK-Russian co-production starring Malcolm McDowell, Sophie Marceau, and Anna Friel that was due to be made that failed to get backing from an American studio. Well, that's unfortunate. Looks like they may still get something, though. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But that's really cool. I would love to learn more. It looks like they did something in Drunk History about the Night Witches with Emily Deschanel playing the role of Marina Raskova. So we might have to check that out sometime. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you may know, and you can add to this conversation. Use the comment section below. We'll talk more about the Night Witches. Amazing story. Very, very cool. Another story that I want to learn more about. And as I said at the beginning, if you'd please consider checking out my Patreon and becoming a supporter of this channel that way, I would very much appreciate that. Please hit that like button. We'll see you again very soon with another reaction. Thanks for watching.